Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. It's Phil here, and we have a special guest. It's Charles Altchek. He's the president of MLS Next Pro. Charles, this is our second time talking. I want to thank you so much for doing this again. I had lots of problems last time with my computer.
It's the story of 2022. Zoom, mute, unmute, on camera, off camera. It's part of our daily lives now. So it's all good. It's great to see you again. And like I said earlier, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, hopefully at a playoff game in the coming weeks.
Yeah,
we have a lot to chat. We have a lot to chat about, a lot to talk about.
Indeed, and as we said, perhaps at Centene if we're lucky, if all goes really, really well. Knock on wood
exactly.
here.
Exactly. Fingers crossed.
Well, you were newly appointed to your position in December of 2021. Got it right this time, and then you had just like months to get a whole new league off the ground. And I really want to hear what that time period was like, what it was like starting a league from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have so much to be thankful for, so much to be proud of, sitting here in September of 2022, looking back. That was an exciting time. And I feel very fortunate to have been a part of it, very fortunate to have had the opportunity to get MLS Next Pro off the ground. I work with great people day in and day out. It helps that I've been at the league office this is my 8th year now, working alongside folks who have in many ways, helped to build the sport in this country with Major League Soccer and with so many other things that they do day to day. So, we very quickly had to hire people, very quickly had to put a plan together, but we always had and have this full support and weight and experience of all of those folks that I've worked with over the years who have built Major League Soccer to what it is today, and that we've been able to lean on whenever necessary to help us build MLS Next Pro. But it was hectic. At the end of the day, in many ways, we were on our own from a lot of different perspectives. We had to come up with a plan, work with our teams. There were a lot of Zoom meetings, late into the night, putting the plans together, putting the competition format together, putting the schedule together. And then we had to sit and wait, not for too long, because all the plans kind of came together, not at the last minute, but, in the days leading up to March 25th. And we didn't know exactly what to expect, but we were confident that we were onto something special. And then sitting in St. Louis, in the downtown stadium at SLU, watching St. Louis City 2 kick off against RNYFC in our first ever MLS Next Pro game in front of thousands of people, almost 7,000 people there that day, could not have been more exciting. And we knew from that moment, watching the game unfold in front of us, that we were onto something really special. And as the year has gone on, and now through Decision Day this past weekend, with last minute goals and teams qualifying for the playoffs in the last minute of the last day of the regular season, we've built something really special. We've built a great platform, but we have so much work to do to take full advantage of it, and the onus is on us to make that happen. So that's what we're going to be focused on going forward.
Yeah, I mean, good competition. If that was one of your goals, then, good last day. A lot of really crazy stuff going on. We were in the booth kind of calling the game and also catching up on the other scores happening. It was all affecting the final results, so that was really interesting. But I want to hear about some goals that perhaps you set forth at the beginning of the season before the season started. And maybe you can talk about some of your successes throughout the season, maybe some of those goals that you checked off the list that you did well on.
Yeah, so look, we going into the year, we sat down as a management team and we put together, after many long hours, 4 pillars that we wanted to serve as our foundation for MLS Next Pro and help orient us whenever we had and have decisions to make. And those are very straightforward. They are player development, local communities, innovation, and underpinning all of it is a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And from a player development perspective, it's about providing that pro player pathway for the best young players competing in the U.S. and Canada, the best young players from the U.S. and Canada representing the U.S. and Canada on their national teams. But we have over 80 countries represented already in our first season in MLS Next Pro. So players, top, 25 and under players for the most part from around the world. From a local community perspective, we wanted to ensure that our teams and our players are connected to their fans, their partners, giving back to their communities, and doing all the things that we know are so important from having been a part of Major League Soccer for the last number of years, to be sure that everybody's moving in the same direction, working together, and providing that link between the team and the community that's so important for everybody involved. And from an innovation perspective, it's about pushing the game forward from every aspect, on and off the field, new rules, new technologies, new competitions, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And then underpinning all of that as a foundational pillar is our commitment to DE&I, and that's all about creating opportunities for the next generation of talent, not just of players, but staff, coaches, technical staff, business staff, but also as we think about growing the league, new owners, new markets, new investors, and providing opportunities for folks from underrepresented groups that want to break into the game. And a lot of our work, not just the league office, but with our teams, has been around that. We're really proud of what we've accomplished so far in our first year, but we have a long way to go and a lot that we want to accomplish yet still. In terms of the highlights, candidly, going into March 25th, our first ever game, we weren't quite sure what to expect on the field. But once we sat down and the game started, we knew that this league was going to over deliver on everybody's expectations. Was this going to be a U19 league where it was just a bunch of young players playing on the weekends? And it's not that at all. It's professional players, players who are under contract with MLS Next Pro, have MLS Next Pro contracts, or MLS players coming down on loan, competing week in and week out. And the competition has been fierce. You mentioned it on our decision day. We had 3 out of the 4 teams in the East still fighting for a playoff spot. We had all 4 teams in the West fighting for position in the playoffs. Every point mattered going into that last game day, and every extra point from a penalty shootout mattered as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But if there's something that we think about that my colleagues and I talk to each other about, and we're just traveling. I was on a red eye last night coming back from California, so we got to spend some time together, as you do when you're in the greater LA area with a lot of drive time between different locations. What's our message to each other? It's that we're just getting started. We're just scratching the surface. We have so much that we want to accomplish, but we've set a really good foundation here in year one. And I'm really proud and grateful to have played a role in getting to where we are. But the onus is on us now to deliver going forward.
Yeah, part of that foundation is the league structure itself. And I forgot to mention last time that, I was surprised. You mentioned was it going to look like a U19 league? That was a worry of mine for sure, seeing my team compete in this league. And your roster structure was a lot more professional and older aged players than I expected as a requirement, not an optional thing that, that it seemed like it would be something you did want to be a little more competitive, not just a developmental league.
Oh yeah, no, this is much more than a development league. There's, of course, one of our pillars is development. So, we're going to stay true to that in everything that we do. But this is a real league with a competition that's happening week in and week out, where the teams want to win, the players want to win, because as a play, a young player trying to make it to the next level, and in many cases make it to the top level. And we've had 13 players start their professional careers in MLS Next Pro in this first season, and then sign contracts in Major League Soccer with their Major League Soccer club, which is a great start, but we're just getting started. Winning matters, and proving that you're a winner really matters. And then for those players who are either, and we've had over 200 players from our academies compete in MLS Next Pro this year, although much less so than probably some people expected. And certainly, in terms of minutes played, a much smaller percentage than professional players, whether they're a MLS Next Pro professional or an MLS player, competing against professionals week in and week out. And that is invaluable. So not only have we created the right ecosystem in terms of training and players moving through the the pathway, but now week in and week out they're getting to compete against professionals. And beyond that, beyond just what we're doing within our own league, within the league itself, one of the key strategic imperatives for us this year was to develop international competition on top of what we're doing in the league itself. And so we had our inaugural MLS Next Pro Invitational in Salt Lake, where we had a few teams from EPL2 fly in and compete against a few of our teams. And it was a great event. It was super competitive. We had, our top players playing against their top players at that level. And, you had guys on Chelsea and on Wolves that, according to different websites and analysts, are worth, significant amounts of money, some of whom even got transferred before the EPL season started this year to other EPL teams and abroad. And it was great. We won all the games. We won several of those games in shootouts. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves as our players start, competing outside of MLS Next Pro. And we can talk about why we thought it was so important to have shootouts at the end of all of our games that went in, that ended in a tie. But we're just getting started. So our plans are, and what we're thinking about now is how to expand international competition, integrate teams from other parts of the world, not just the UK, but other leagues in Europe. Certainly our partners in Mexico and Liga MX. So nice. We've got a lot to look forward to.
I like that. Speaking of new rules in the shootout, I want to hear about the off-field treatment rule. I want to hear about the red card suspension rule. And, yeah, let's talk about shootouts at the same time. It seemed to me, I'm curious, that those first two I mentioned came out after a really interesting game with St. Louis City. Now, I'm curious if that was like a direct response to that and you guys are moving that fast and you're that experimental with some league rules, which I like, that perhaps MLS proper will adopt. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on how those came about.
Yeah, so let's start with in chronological order. Let's start with the shootout rule because that one was in place from day one. And the idea behind that was, we have this platform to innovate and to try new things. And it's not that a shootout is a new thing that nobody's seen before. The NHL is doing it now at the end of their regular season games, where if a game ends in a tie, they take it to a shootout to determine the same thing as we are, the winner of an extra point. But shootouts in soccer could not be more important. Once you get to the higher levels, once you get to knockout tournaments, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw this format in meaningful competition that's coming up in the years to come that we're a part of. And so from our perspective, there were two reasons that we did it. And before we get into that, I'll be the first one to tell you there was a lot of consternation around this new rule from coaches and executives and others in our ecosystem as to, is this gimmicky? Is it going to minimize what we're doing? Is it going to position the league in the wrong way? And we believed strongly that it was the opposite, that it was going to help push the game, in a positive direction. And the reason for that is, one, for our players from a development perspective to get to test themselves in a competitive environment, in games of consequence, in a way that is very hard to recreate in practice, if not impossible. We all know that when you get into the highest levels, whether it's the Champions League, World Cup, CONCACAF, tournaments, the Gold Cup, etc., shootouts matter and can determine, a team's fate. And if you're not ready for that moment, the moment will get the better of you. And so from a player development perspective, for those taking the kicks from the mark, for the goalies, for everyone involved, we had convinced ourselves that it would be a really good dynamic for them. And then from a fan perspective, it's hard to argue, and you're not going to convince me that there are a few things that are more exciting than a shootout at the end of a game, whether you love it or you hate it. once in a while you have a goal in extra time or added time. We used to have golden goals. I love golden goals. I'd be an advocate for bringing those back. But there's nothing quite like the tension and the drama that comes with a shootout. And when you've got the overlay of the goalie's face and the penalty taker's kick taker's face at the same time, you can see and you can feel the pressure no matter where you are. And I'm sure we'll see some of that in the playoffs over the next 3 weekends. And it'll be interesting to see how the players react to that moment. I'm excited for them.
It's affected St. Louis quite a bit this season, and it's affected our goalkeepers and like who we choose and stuff like that. It's been interesting.
Yeah, nobody will be able to say, "Hey, I didn't get to practice my penalty shots," going into the playoffs. So, and so that was step one from day one, and then over the course of the season, one of our strategic pillars from an innovation perspective is how to make the game better, how to keep pushing the game forward. And what we want is more soccer, more action, less downtime, less dead time, less time watching players walk around, talking to each other, talking to the ref, talking to their coaches, whatever they do, and just more soccer. And so one of the a lot of the rules that we've been thinking about have been in that vein. And you've been around as long as I have, talking to folks who are not soccer fans, who are fans of other sports. And in many of those conversations, I'm sure it's the same for you as it is for me. They'll say, "Oh, soccer's interesting, but why are those guys rolling around all the time? Why did you guys get rid of that?" And so we came at it from two perspectives with the off-field treatment rule. One is how to ensure that the players are getting the best treatment possible in the best environment. And we believe that that's off the field, not on the field with all the other players, the ref, everybody yelling at you, to get off the field or hurry up or to do whatever you need to do from their perspective. And then two, we wanted to, be mindful of the fact, and we are mindful of the fact that there are players who take advantage of that moment to, whether it's slow the game down, kill momentum, or just waste time. And what we've seen so far in the 100+ games where we've had the rule in place is there's very little of that going on now. Players are, if they're injured, they're injured and they get taken care of, and we're never going to get in the way of that. But if a player is not injured and was thinking that this might be a good time to, get a water break or hang out or rest or whatever, that's not what's happening anymore. So look, we only have the second half of the season, and now we'll have the playoffs as a data set. We'll see, the feedback's been very positive from everybody involved. There was a lot of consternation about this one as well, in a different way, because people were concerned, like we were, of course, is this going to be an opening for players to try to hurt each other or knock each other out of the game for 3 minutes? But we've seen none of that. And I think that's because the rule, I give Ali Curtis and his team a lot of credit, working with what we have, what's called the On-Field Innovation Committee, which is comprised of team personnel, league office personnel from different disciplines, liaising with leaders from around, the soccer ecosystem in our region, U.S. Soccer, the CSA, the Canadian Soccer Association, and others, because there's a lot, collectively, there's a lot of experience around that, that round table. And we wanted to be sure to tap into all of it, and not leave any stone unturned. And Ali's done a great job. He ran a great process to get this rule in place, coordinating with our teams, communicating with our teams, and the refs, by the way, who are the key protagonists in a lot of this in many ways, because they're the ones who have to enact the rule and make sure that the rule works. And the feedback from them has been overly positive. And what they've said, because we've asked them for their feedback in writing, is we didn't have a tool to deal with this in the past. If a player was injured, there's nothing we could do to move the game forward. It was out of our hands. And now we have this new way to kind of check whether that's true or not. And if it's true and the player is injured, nothing changes. The player receives as much treatment as he needs on the field, as much treatment as he needs off the field, and nothing's changed from that perspective. But if the player in his own words, doesn't actually need that treatment. They're getting up and the game moves forward. And so what we're seeing now is, on average, trainers are coming onto the field once or not at all per game over since the rule has been in place. And the key for us is to benchmark that against what was happening in the first half of the season, and then what's been happening in MLS. And that's the work that we're going through now.
Love it. Yeah, I think they've. It's been fun to watch those, and yeah, maybe MLS will accept those kinds of rules and maybe adopt some of them.
Well, for sure, the reason we're doing these things is to see if they make sense for Major League Soccer. Some will and some won't,
Yeah.
but that's part of our process. What we're going to be sure to do is stay true to the game and not be gimmicky, not deviate too far from what this sport is all about, because we're all, first and foremost fans of the sport and respectful of its history, etc.
I was a big fan of all of those changes, and I continue to be. Another thing I'm a big fan of is I thought you guys did a really good job with your stats page. That's something that as a podcast, we look at that regularly, and I thought you guys were pretty thorough with that, and it's easy to load and read, which can be troublesome in other leagues. So yeah, I wanted to maybe ask, was that a no-brainer? Was it an easy one to get out there, or was it something you prioritized and really picked through?
Nothing has been a no-brainer, and nothing has been easy. It's all been really hard work, and I give credit to everybody. I'm really proud of what we've done on the digital side in terms of engaging with our fans. We've had fans from over 180 countries in the world watching our games on MLSnextPro.com. We've had hundreds of thousands of fans engaging with our content on the website and on social media. And we're just getting started. I think when we were together earlier today, you had referenced that you wanted to talk about some of the challenges that we've had. And one has been with our broadcasts. We tried a new technology this year. It's an AI-based platform, and not without challenges, but that's what this league is all about, is to try things, and if they work, great, and if they don't, we keep evolving, we keep learning, and we keep moving forward. So what's exciting for me as the leader of the league, and for all of us who are involved in the sport, is we're part of the transformational new relationship with Apple, and so all of our games next year will be on the Apple platform, which will be a whole new opportunity for us to engage with our fans, try new things. I mean, Apple is the top technology company in the world, and we couldn't be more excited about working with them to change the game, because I really believe we have the opportunity to do that. And when I get asked, well, what role does MLS Next Pro have in all that? And my answer is, if there's anything you want to try that you're not sure about for prime time, we'll be your test tube. We'll be your platform for to try things that may not be ready for MLS for whatever reason or otherwise. So we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah, let's get that out of the way. So I think you just said that all the MLS Next Pro games will be on Apple Plus, or did you just say MLS? Did I misunderstand?
The plan is for all the MLS Next Pro games next year to be on the Apple platform. Yeah.
Aha, okay. No, we thought it was just going to be like one game a week. So that's big news here as well. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to give you maybe a Christmas list of things that we've been worried about watching these broadcasts. The AI cameras, I think, at times were difficult with certain dead zones, so maybe that'll improve, or some of the camera angles being pretty high. We would love to see instant replays and match replays. I know these are all, listen, man, I come from USL from back in the ages, and if we go from what it looked like in the first year versus now, it's a massive change. So I'm not being super negative, but I think I'd be remiss to not mention them to you and just see if any of those things are going to be improved in the future.
As we spend more time together, what you'll hopefully learn from us is we're very transparent about our strengths and our weaknesses. And we had a lot of great things happening this year. And if you ask me, hey, what do you want to improve for 2023? I would say everything, everything. There's nothing that we don't want to improve for next year. And our broadcasts are a big part of that. Better technology from every perspective is a big part of that. And that's a big emphasis and focus for us next year and the years ahead.
Nice. So maybe match replays or anything like that?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
something you
We'll
considered?
see. Everything's on the table. Everything's
Yeah.
on the table. We're working through all of that now.
And that's, I mean, Apple has a big say in that, I'm sure, as well. So, um, cool. Let's talk about the new upcoming thing. So 7 teams are going to be coming over from USL Championship in the next season, that are 2 teams, MLS affiliated clubs. And then there have been rumored like 13 other clubs that might be coming in as independent sides. I think you might have had a number that's more exact. And while we talk about that, I just kind of want to get it out of the way because everyone is talking up a storm online about, some of these cities are shared by USL cities. So is this like just competitivism is going to make you better? Is there a fight over some of these cities? What is the view of all of these evolving changes in the U.S. soccer dynamic?
Yeah, so we'll start with from a growth perspective. We're looking forward to integrating the next wave of teams in 2023, and you mentioned who those are, and so that some of these teams are new. Nashville, Charlotte, and Austin are launching their second team for the first time, and then others have been competing in the USL Championship for the last number of years. So it'll be great to add all of them and integrate all of them into our competition next year. And then beyond that, we've been spending a lot of time on potential independent teams. So if you think about broad strokes, our vision for MLS Next Pro over the years to come, call it 29 to 30 MLS affiliated teams to start, and then we've got Rochester, who've done an amazing job, and we'll talk more about them. And then, looking ahead to the World Cup in 2026, the idea is to grow this league thoughtfully and meaningfully 10 to 20 independent teams over the next number of years. And so we've been traveling around the country. I was just was on a red eye last night, coming back from the West Coast on an expansion visit, meeting with potential ownership groups, talking about stadium plans, meeting with public officials, and the energy around it has been awesome. I think it's a good moment to talk about Rochester, and they've done an unbelievable job. I give David and Wendy Dworkin and their partner Jamie Vardy a lot of credit for what they've accomplished this year, because it's been hard. It's been hard at every turn. You mentioned that we announced the league back in December of 2021. That was when we also announced Rochester. And if you think about launching a new league, that's one thing, to launch a new league out of MLS. It's another thing to launch the first ever independent team in MLS Next Pro, announcing in December and playing your first game on March 25th. And everything seemed to go against them. Visa issues, travel issues, their new coach, Bruno, who's done an amazing job, only had a few weeks, if that, to be with his team. And even going into the first game, they hadn't really spent any time together as a team, as a whole. And they had new players coming in the first few weeks of the season from all over the world and all over the country. And then once they got through that period, then they really started to click and get into the second and third gear and compete. And what they've done is tremendous against all odds. And sitting here today, with them getting ready for their first playoff game against Columbus on Saturday, getting ready to compete for the first ever, the inaugural MLS Next Pro Cup over the next number of weeks. I couldn't be happier for them. Couldn't be more grateful for what they've achieved this year in terms of, being everything we've asked them to be and more. And I'm really looking forward to everything they've got going on in the years to come. And then beyond that, we're really enthused by what the reception has been around the country as it relates to what we're doing in MLS Next Pro. And I've spent the last number of years working on expansion within MLS, and I've gotten to be part of all of the new teams that have come in, and the new stadiums and the new ownership groups, working very closely with all of them. But that road is coming to an end here very very soon. And now I get a whole new platform to build and continue to build the sport in new markets with new owners, new stadiums. I mean, it couldn't be more exciting from my perspective, and I'm really looking forward to taking full advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah. So what would you say are the benefits of choosing MLS Next Pro over some other ones? I can think of, like the cost of USL is going up and up and up. That's at least a starting point. It seems like you can get into your league a little more affordably. But what are some other things that when you go to these expansion cities that you're talking about?
We're just focused on what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no comparing one versus the other. Other folks may want to do that, and from my perspective, I think it's great that people have options. Folks have options, but we're just focused on what we're doing, which is building a great league that has the top players, under the age of 25 from the U.S. and Canada and from around the world competing week in and week out, and trying to make it to the top level here in this country and abroad. And we're just getting started. So we're really, we think we have a great opportunity ahead of us, but we've got to deliver, and that's what we're focused on.
That's well said. I want to talk about the future because we talked a little bit about new clubs that could be coming in, independent clubs. Can you tell me about what is in store in the next year and even long term, like in the next 5-10 years? What is this league going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to look very different than what it looks like today. That's if we do it the right way. When you think about having a 40-50 team league, that's you have to start to get really creative around the competition format, and you've got to think about it a little bit differently than probably what we have going on today. So we're going to put a lot of work into that. I think there's going to be, if things are working the way that, if we're doing things the right way, we're going to have a really important and meaningful international competition that's part of our schedule year in and year out, whether it's the break, similar to what MLS is doing with Leagues Cup next year, whether it's a break in the middle of our season and you have the first half of the season, the table, you qualify for the international competition in some way, shape, or form, and then we have that, and then we kick into the second half, into the playoffs. There's so many different things we can do, but the most important thing is to keep building this the right way with great teams, great ownership groups, with really strong stadium projects, and what's different about MLS Next Pro, and you touched on it earlier, is it's a different investment profile than what we're dealing with now in MLS, where the numbers have gotten significant, and it's not that the numbers are not important in MLS Next Pro. It's still a real commitment for anybody. But what it does mean is you can play in smaller stadiums, and we think we can be successful almost anywhere. So there are cities that we've been traveling to that we would not have been able to travel to and consider for MLS, just because of it's a different construct and it's a different strategy. And I'm confident that we'll have some fun news to share over the next couple months from that perspective. I'm looking forward to that. But we've got a lot of work to do, and a long road ahead from that perspective. Great.
Is there anything else you want to kind of talk about or mention that I haven't mentioned yet to close things out here?
We talked about season one. We've talked about the future, but the next 3 weeks are going to be really fun. It's going to be short. It's going to be intense. 3 weekends in a row of our top teams battling it out for the first ever MLS Next Pro Cup on October 8th. And at this point, I think there are no favorites. Clearly, Columbus had a great season. St. Louis had a great regular season. But now it's back to square one. And as we've seen in the playoffs in MLS, when you have a single elimination game, anything can happen. So I'm excited for the fans. I'm excited for the players. Personally, I can't wait to watch, to see how it unfolds. And we're going to learn a lot, as we have been all year. We're going to learn a lot over the next 3 weekends. And 2023 is going to be exponentially better than 2022. And we've already gotten off on the right foot. So, for me, I really appreciate this time with you. I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting you at a playoff game in the next couple weeks, and looking forward to chatting more on all fronts as things keep developing.
Yeah. Again, I want to thank you for your grace in working with me and redoing this today.
Of course.
And
Of course.
again, the things I love most about this league are, the experimentation, pushing the game forward, the producing new young talent and moving them on, and just I think the thing I was most worried about that you really delivered on was the competition, the level of competition. It was a fun year. It wasn't an easy year for a team that was a little bit stacked in our case and in some cases. So I want to thank you for all the work you guys did, and I look forward to what you guys do in the future.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.